Good evening and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and it's the goal of all of us in our program to bring you current and educational information surrounding not only the drug epidemic, but even alcohol and mental health issues associated with this terrible, terrible epidemic that we're dealing with. This evening we are pleased to have as a return guest Erin Maher Alves. Erin is a mother. She is also a self-help writer, and most recently a published author in September of 2017 of a book called The Crazy Bee. Erin, welcome back to A Deadly Silence.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about The Crazy Bee.
Okay, The Crazy Bee is a dark adventure that I take the reader on because I have had mental health issues since I was 13. Well aware I'm mentally ill. Well aware that we don't like the mentally ill. So I don't tell anybody. I don't talk about it. My mom knows.
Society doesn't like the mentally ill because they don't understand.
At that point in my life, I knew for me to get anywhere in life, to not talk about it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
To deal with it on the inside, but not on the exterior. That didn't work out that well. By the time I was 15, I had a psychotic break and I was locked up in a psych hospital. So didn't matter how much I didn't want to talk about it, my symptoms were out and I got trapped for 6 weeks, which led to a plot of revenge against the mental health system.
Okay.
Because I'm a writer and an artist, and don't upset somebody who knows how to write or who knows how to paint, because we will use that to motivate us for life, because we know that dark space, so we know how to create. Again, I get out of the psych hospital, do the same thing I normally do. I don't talk about it. I don't tell people what's wrong with me. I remember actually one of my closest friends coming up to me and saying, "We need to talk about what happened." And I said, "You ask me once more, I will knock you out." No way, we're not talking about it. Because at that point, I realized that if it was out that I was mentally ill, my career would go down and I would never have a chance to work. And I worked with kids. So I was like, okay, I can't let you know I'm crazy, but boy, do you enjoy my art projects. Right. Boy, do you enjoy the fact I can come up with the curriculum that's crazy. So I had a normal life. I got married, I had kids, and I got divorced.
A normal life according to society's norms.
Well, I don't know who's, we are coming to this beautiful place right now in 2018 where acceptance is happening for the mentally ill, because we're starting to understand. Like the last time I was on the show, I talked about that you're talking about a mentally ill human being. They're going through exactly what you're going through. They've had the same trials and tribulations, except they're stigmatized to the point they can't speak about what they're going through. So in 2011, I got outed in a courtroom, which was the best day of my life.
Okay.
Because when a judge looks at you and is like, "Defend yourself," and I was just like, oh, I've been waiting for this one. And I was like, well, I'm a healthy mentally ill person, and I put myself in the hospital. I think at that point, I had stayed in a psych unit 2 times for treatment and 1 time for my suicide attempt, which was not a healthy decision, but it was out of fear. But I said, I go into hospitals because I know I'm going to get sick, and I refuse to be in symptoms in society. And I said, and by the way, I've just retired from being Miss Erin. I had a really rough month. I retired in February. I was in court by March. So I had a rough month. But what I didn't mention to the judge was I have already started writing this book called The Crazy Bee. I started writing it in 2009 because I realized that everything that I'd been trying to fake, because that's all I was doing. I was just trying to go with the motions of society. Because if you work hard enough to present yourself well, then people will believe you're well. And I worked really hard on presenting that I was well. So I could be a teacher, so I could be a party host, so I could be all these different careers that I loved. The one thing I had never actually learned to do was be healthy.
Okay. So when you, I've read a couple of different things on, some posts on social media and, conversations you're having and so forth. And when you talk about being healthy, talk about advocating for the mental health itself right now. You've experienced your personal issues with suicide and recovery successfully at that. Talk a little bit about that.
It is the weirdest thing to look at your friend and go, well, I really don't like being alive right now, and I don't know what to do about it. It's something that is pretty much, we're conditioned to talk about suicide after it happens. So it was a very strange experience to wake up and to have family members of me like horrified. I didn't know you were that sick. And then I was kind of like, well, you've known me my whole life. You knew I had times in psych hospitals. We just never talked about me being that sick.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn when it was appropriate to feel my feelings. And I learned, sadly, it was never appropriate.
Feel the feelings or express those feelings?
To even feel them.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because I learned that if I can present well, smile, do the right thing, be awesome at my job, be awesome at everything I'm doing, but I was a self-hater. So it didn't matter how awesome I was, that self-hate was dictating that I shouldn't even have purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm creating all these good things, but I'm not even allowing myself to enjoy the creating of
Mm-hmm.
good things. I'm very lucky that I've been in recovery now for 7 years.
Congratulations.
And how you know I'm still in recovery is I'm still here.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's anything, any addiction of that magnitude, you know. I have 2 sons that are in long-term recovery through their substance abuse issue. And I'm the lucky parent because my children are still with me.
Right.
You know.
You are a very lucky parent.
Absolutely, you know. And you yourself and your family is equally lucky to still have you, you know, out there. So what would you say, you know, I read somewhere that you had described yourself as being a crafty girl. So talk a little bit about that.
See, that's where it comes into the fact I was not raised in a traditional family. I have no clue what other people were doing when they were growing up. I was raised by a single parent whose goal was to go to college and to become successful. So if mom was happy, we all were happy. So we all worked together for her to go to college. She's a social worker. That's where comes the whole, like, I could handle life because somebody at home was prompting me to handle life and telling me how to handle life because she knew the system, so she helped me kind of
navigate it?
Trick it?
Okay. I'll trick it.
Trick it a little bit.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like 2 in the morning and I'd be listening to music in my room and I'd go, hey, Mom, I'm really in the mood to paint an angel mural on my wall. Oh, go ahead. But it's 2 in the morning. Oh, it's okay. I'm studying. Go paint your mural. So I would spend like months painting a mural. You know, it wasn't just like a day. I would just sit there and I at that point I was doing oil-based. And then it turned into a fantasy piece where my whole room was purple and there was like a mermaid, a castle, you know, and clouds on the ceiling, like just really, it wasn't the best piece because I wasn't, for art for me, it's not about the quality to others, it's about the experience. So I just grew up painting and drawing, and even when I'm in psych hospital, still always go, make sure she does art therapy because that's how the anger goes away. Because you would never believe that I have an angry side. No, not the way that I present myself. But it's there. And if I'm in a hospital...
Would that anger come out in any of your artistic expressions?
Okay, so this is the weirdest thing. I have a piece hanging up at Stairway to Recovery, and it's this beautiful, like bright, vibrant piece. And everybody always stands in front of it and they go, oh, I love it. I see hearts and it's so gorgeous. It makes me feel so good. And I'm like, I was really suicidal when I did that. And they laugh now. Like it's weird when you get to the point that you can laugh at where you've been.
Where you've been.
Right. And then I didn't want to get well because I thought that meant I couldn't do art anymore. I thought that's where
All right.
And I'm still doing art, so I'm really happy about this. So I've been doing holiday pieces, which is kind of juvenile, but it's been fun.
So you're going back to your book, The Crazy Bees. Does it take you through? Tell the audience how that book is.
I have a dark sense of humor. I've always had a dark sense of humor. So I take you on this really dark journey, explaining to you the ins and outs of the actual system, because we cope by communicating. We cope by sharing our stories. But when a person who actually has mental illness to the point that they get debilitated and they need hospitalization, no longer do they feel comfortable to explain what they've gone through, because that means they've been in a psychiatric hospital, and there's a stigma. So I make sure to share all my secrets on how to actually avoid being in a hospital. If you are in a hospital, what to expect. how to avoid ending up in court, because I ended up in court because there's a law stating that if you go to a psych hospital, you're giving up custody of your children if you're brought to court.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. So what I was doing to protect myself and to heal myself was actually making my children being taken from me. And so that's the main objective of the story, is that all parents are aware that this whole mental illness, even though I'm smiling and laughing about it, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. No. No, because you really want to be here. You have no clue what's going to happen next. So when you were in the hospital, you know, dealing with the mental illness, the suicide, you know, tendencies that you had, how did medication play into this? Is there something that we need to be cognizant of? Medication for me was always something I'm holistic. I stopped. Okay. I've stopped practicing modern medicine at age 15. I will only go to the doctors if I have to. I'm not one of those ridiculous people who, like, I shouldn't say that. I'm not one of those people who will just, I will go in if I have to.
Right.
So I'm 15 and I explained to them, I'm holistic. I believe in energy heals, and they have on making me take meds. And that's one of the reasons why I started my revenge plan, because in my case, and it's a severity, this doesn't always happen, I stopped being able to see, feeding myself, walking straight because of the symptoms. And I remember telling you that at the last, yes. But as of right now, I got on a new med 7 years ago. We tapered it and tapered it and tapered it and tapered it. But I'm still on it because I have fear of what's going to happen if I get off of it.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that. So we'll see.
And it's at a place where you feel very comfortable.
I'm healthy.
Yeah.
Like
Okay. Yep.
I'm healthy and I'm stable, and it's weird for me. So
when you say you're healthy, there's an element of physical health versus mental health. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. When you see somebody, you quickly judge the way they look. It takes 20 seconds to figure out somebody. If we like them, we do not like them. We look at somebody if they're physical, like physically fit, you know, or slovenly, or how their hair looks. Okay, awesome. But when you're actually mentally ill, especially in my case, it's always important to me that I present well.
Okay.
I can't present well if I'm not feeling well. Like there's things to make sure that I make sure I sleep. I'm not one of those people who will stay up all the time. I avoid any stimulants or of any kind, because with my brain chemistry already being the way it is, I don't need a setback. So when I was a kid, one of the reasons why we never spoke about it was because I was being responsible. And if you do have a mental health diagnosis, usually it's a life sentence.
Okay.
So you need to figure out your diagnosis, and you need to be comfortable with it. But in my case, I got all my diagnoses taken away in May of 2017. And I had to stop the printing of my book because I'm sitting across my therapist, and he looks at me and he finally goes, we've known each other for 7 years, right after my suicide attempt. I love him to death. He's an amazing man. I wouldn't have never been able to go on the journey if I didn't have him. He looks at me and he goes, that's it. You're just eccentric and really weird and you're wild. And he's like, I don't know. And so then he read the book and he looks at me and he goes, we don't have to do therapy anymore. I'm sorry for your journey. He's like, thank you for the book. I appreciate the story. But that's a very rare instance of that happening. And I still am in therapy. I actually called him and I said, no, I need therapy. I have future goals. I have lots of goals that I want, and I want you to be part of that. So
He's been an important part for 7 years
yes.
to begin with.
Yes.
Right.
Well, him and I have the same type of philosophies, so, and that worked a lot. And he also was a drummer, so the fact that he had a creative thing going on, so I never sat in front of him and felt uncomfortable with my passion.
Okay, there you go. You've said in the past that you try to stay humble. What's that mean?
If you are ever, okay, I practice Buddhism. So for me, the fact that I'm on a path is my life path. And I believe everybody's on their life path.
Some of us may not know that.
Exactly.
Right.
But my life has been a gift ever since the day that I woke up in a hospital fighting to be alive. And so when you actually want to be here, you make sure that all the moments create this kaleidoscope of beauty. And you sometimes look back, and what I do is I'll look back at the beautiful life that I have, and I'm like, how grateful I am that I was given this. And I get to participate. So I stay humble.
So during your journey, what was you mentioned the fact that by going to court with the suicidal issues, the possibility of losing your children, how did the family piece hold itself together?
I have the most amazing family that ever existed. We grew up in such a weird little world.
I think we all grew up in
individual. And the more you're comfortable with it too, like the more that you love that you grew up in this weird lifestyle. We had talent shows every night after dinner, and we went to bed singing and dancing. It didn't matter how bad the day was. We went to bed singing and dancing. And it really didn't matter what went on. My mom taught us no matter what, we had to be resilient. So I'm so lucky and blessed to be from that.
That's beautiful. And I think we all have our little world that we, participate in our own unique ways as well. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but when you said that the acceptance is cluttered by hate, that mental health acceptance is cluttered by hate, that's the stigmatism of mental health itself that society has in general? Is that what you're looking at?
When we talk about mental illness, it's something that we are actually saying out loud to make sure that those who are mentally ill understand that we know they're mentally ill, as if it differentiates the quality of the human being that we're speaking about. When I first went through my struggle with my children, I went from literally doing everything right except not taking care of myself, to teaching children every day for almost 20 years, to hearing from a local newspaper that when I called and said, oh my gosh, I almost lost custody of my kids. Well, you shouldn't have been working with them, never mind having them.
Okay.
And I was just like, so then I heard that from one local newspaper, and I was like, well, boy, that kind of stung. Get it? So, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I call another newspaper, but this time I call a Boston. No, it was Boston News. I heard the same exact thing. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be a great story to tell years later when we start to understand that the mentally ill are not the problem. The problem is we're living in a country that won't create a solution for them. How do you expect someone to even stay healthy if you won't give universal health care to those who need it so desperately so they can function and be part of their families?
Or at least recognize whatever the illness is that individual may be dealing with and get the help that they might need.
There's this old thing that we all talk about, the mentally ill crew. We talk about that mental illness should be treated like diabetes. You would never tell somebody not to take their insulin.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the same thing with substance abuse,
Yes.
The chemical imbalance of the substance on the brain, it's not the individual that, my two sons. It wasn't my two sons that were there.
It was the disease.
Substance. It was the disease, right?
Yes.
No question about that. And if we see it every day with the increase in overdoses out there, you're not going to let that individual die. If they were doing a diabetic shock, you'd make sure they get their insulin shot.
Exactly.
The individuals out there who promote, let them die. Hey, he's had three strikes. Just let him die now. Because maybe he's relapsed.
Which is the
3 times.
saddest thing, because recovery is the most beautiful thing that I have friends who are like, "Are you done with this recovery thing yet?" No, it's a lifetime bid. Actually, I have to be in recovery forever, because where I was 7 years ago, I do not want to go again.
Well, and I think that's something that society in general doesn't recognize either, is that recovery is a lifetime commitment. In the context that relapse is a reality of the disease that you may be experiencing, but recovery is for life. And some people are very, very blessed and be able to go on long periods of times, others aren't. But we think that on the standpoint of the addict who's dealing with a substance abuse disorder, they go to detox 3-4 days, and we assume they're recovered. Not even close.
Well, because you have to actually rewire the brain, and that's I've been in a lot of college classes, and when you actually hear about how addiction starts and what it's doing to your brain and how it's releasing dopamine that most people don't have naturally as an adult due to life, and then they do something and it's a pleasure center and suddenly you feel happy and you want to feel happy again, and that's how it starts, and it's a cycle. It's not really a fun thing to go through, I don't think.
No, it's fun chasing it as long as you can get it, but when you can't get it, it's pretty painful, out there. There was a quote I saw just recently, if I can mention it, by Eleanor Roosevelt. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. Where do you see yourself?
I'm an idea person.
Okay. All right. You've got a great mind.
For me,
you had an idea to do a book and you did it.
My dad is a very strange human being. I did not grow up with him on a daily basis, but he didn't know how to relate to me as being a child, especially being a girl child. That threw him off. So he talked to me about business a lot when I was a kid.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so our relationship right now is amazing. My dad's an addict. It is amazing right now because we have an hour-long session of spirituality that we talk about where we're at in our spiritual growth. And that's awesome to go to someone who believes in stuff that you believe in. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't believe in that, I don't believe in that. But he's been believing this stuff for for a really long time. So it's nice to have guidance, And it's never been like a dad relationship. Mm-hmm. When I was 8, I told him that he lost the whole dad competition.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like you're gonna level down. You're gonna be a friend. Mm-hmm. So, because I realized
at 8 years old.
Yes, well, because I realized he wasn't good at this commitment thing. He didn't know how to show up.
Okay.
So when I think I cried a lot when I was little about him leaving, but I think around 5 it started leveling out. That I just realized that some people are not meant to be dads, and that's okay. So.
Really. That's interesting. Well, there's some mothers that aren't meant to be mothers either out there, equally as well. And there's some kids that probably shouldn't be kids. At least sometimes we experience that as parents. But, so great minds discussing the ideas. What are some of the other ideas that you've had as part of your recovery that you'd like to continue to explore?
Right now, I start training the end of February to become a recovery coach, a peer recovery coach. I go to Stairway to Recovery. I've been going there for 7 years. I started going there because I hated society, never wanted to leave my house. And a case manager goes, that's not really good, how about you go there? And so I showed up there, and it's peer run.
Yep.
And I just fit in. And now I volunteer 3 days a week. I do outreach volunteering. And I love it, and I'm so happy.
And it's a pretty impressive organization, Stairway to Recovery, here in downtown Brockton. As you said, peer ran, and it's actually part of the Champion Plan from the Office of Mayor Bill Carpenter, along with the Brockton Police Department. And the, how am I going to say it, Guardian Center?
I'm not going to pronounce it.
I know, I blow it all the time as well.
Gondera.
Yeah, Gondera, thank you, Center. Yeah, it's a phenomenal program. We've had Stairway to Recovery on the show a couple of times. We've actually done a couple of their outings, cookouts during the summer. So yeah, it's a well-run peer program, one that is very accepting of individuals who aren't even sure that there's a place for them to go right now.
It's like a love center. Like no matter we're in the community room, and the minute you cross the threshold of the door, we're just like, hey, how are you? Like automatically, because you don't know where they're coming from and where their life is at that moment. But it's just acceptance.
And you've been there now almost 7 years.
Yes.
Working
I was a peer and I would hang out, but I would end up didn't matter who you were sitting next to me, I would end up counseling you. Okay. I had been studying to be a psychologist since I was 18, and I finally left college in November, and I realized that psychology is not for me because I do not have the method of watching somebody not do well, and I want to help them be okay. In psychology, you have to wait for the client to figure out what's going on, and you can't interfere with their life and say this is the easier way to do it. When you're a peer recovery, you can talk about your experiences and help immediately to help them figure out an easier way.
As you're talking about your experiences, they're kind of basically revisiting similar experiences potentially that they've had, and now you've got firsthand knowledge to say, at that time, here's what I found worked for me.
Yes.
May not work for you.
Right.
But here's what
And that's the coolest thing about the peer community, because we're all the same.
Yep.
And there's no hierarchy.
Yep. And phenomenal people that in recovery themselves, that are the peer group, there. And I can't speak enough of the great job that you do over there at Stairway to Recovery as well. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Is it self-fulfilling for yourself too by being there? I mean, you're helping others, but are you also helping yourself?
I think the only reason why I do what I'm doing is because of the fact that it helps me too. It helps me stay grounded in where I'm going and what my path is.
So what does the future hold for Erin? What do you see if you had a crystal ball?
To successfully become a peer recovery coach, work on getting my own home, living away from my lovely mother who I love to live with, but I'm 40.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And then I was actually thinking about becoming an EMT also. So,
really?
Yes. That's another journey I think I want to take.
I can help you there.
Wait a minute.
Put two and two together just then. There you go.
Suddenly like a ambulance just flashed by my head.
You go. Well, that's phenomenal. And, I mean, it's amazing when you think of becoming a peer recovery coach. What's involved in that?
It's going to be an intensive training of, it's 4 days a week. You learn, and then you do an intern, so then you do. Then you look for a job. But I have to do, I think, 500 hours of being an intern. So I'm pretty excited about that.
And that's 500 hours of teaching, or is that 500 hours of actual peer contact? Peer contact
shadowing.
Okay, all right. Shadowing an existing recovery coach.
Yep.
And picking out.
Well, they're finding that peer recovery actually gets people to be in recovery. Okay. It's one of those things because you see that it's possible.
Yeah. A lot of people need to be taken by the hand because they don't know which road to go down.
Right.
Or how to take that first step on that journey.
The hardest part is to get over the stigma that's in your head.
That's the biggest obstacle you find it's happening with and that's part of the mental health issue out there. Okay. So we've got about 2 minutes left here. So what would you say to our audience about there as it relates to that whole prevention, recovery on the mental health agenda?
The big picture, if you take care of your mental health, your life will change to the point that you will have healthier relationships with everyone and including yourself. And that's really important.
And family, actually I want to go back to the spiritual issue because that always seems to be one of the major foundations. How important is that in the recovery aspects? Regardless of your denomination, whatever your spiritual.
Well, thankfully at Stairway, it's all paths to recovery. And for me, I started practicing Buddhism in 2015, and that also changed everything out of me. Because I realized what I was searching for wasn't what everybody else was searching for. So I think spirituality is very important, that you know your higher power.
Okay. On behalf of all of us here at The Deadly Silence, Erin, I want to thank you for coming in again and sharing your story with us. Congratulations on the Crazy Bee, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. On behalf of all of us here at The Deadly Silence, hope you have a good evening. Thank you.